in soccer. We're really excited about this session as well. Obviously, two quality presenters that we have, very lucky to have in coming from out of town. Sara, who we've met, but a little bit more about Sara specifically with this topic. She's an experienced, innovative, and enthusiastic leader. Sara's demonstrated the ability to work effectively and collaboratively with diverse groups of people and organizations to bring innovative ideas to reality. Sara and her team at Guelph Soccer were recipients of the Sport Canada's Innovation Grant. This project strives to support and advance gender equality in sport by breaking down the barriers of entry of women in coach, and the hope that will increase female registration and help balance the gender gap participation between boys and girls. And first, other presenter here, Kristina. Kristina is a women's national team player who's attended 2 World Cups, 2 Pan Am Games, over 75 caps for Canada. The list goes on and on. Experienced one of the all-time best players for Canada soccer. We're very excited to have her. She's just recently employed with Ottawa Soccer Club, and was working with Canada Soccer previous to that with Dave Nutt, as he mentioned as well. So without further ado, I'm going to shut up and let these girls take the lead because they're much better than what I am, and a big round of applause for both of them.
Thank you, Marcus.
Yes, thank you. All right, I wanted to share a little bit more about myself, especially considering we're talking about gender equity today. I took a technical director position close to 11 years ago now, when my son was 2 months old, and I was a single parent, not really knowing what I was getting into or how I was going to manage the life of a technical director with a newborn baby. I ended up taking Paul with me to games and to training, coaching with him in a baby Bjorn, having meetings where he was sitting in his car seat underneath the desk and my foot was rocking him. As he got older, parents from our community watched him on the sidelines while I worked. And then when he went to school, I was able to manipulate my schedule so that I could spend time with him as well as do the job that I was hired to do. This wasn't intentional from our club. They just allowed it to happen. And it was the reason why I was able to continue on in my role as long as I was. And it really ignited a passion in me for gender equity and to start building out programs to meet the needs of coaches and leaders, administrators, and board members.
She's pretty badass, right? Am I allowed to say badass?
Yeah.
Okay. She's pretty badass. And when I think about that story, right, when you think about Kristina showing up at a soccer field with her, 6-month-old on her back, you can imagine, like in today's world, like maybe that's a little bit frowned upon. That's not professional, right? Or maybe that's exactly what we should be doing if we want to close the gender gap. So I just want to pause and really consider that, the expectations we have on women in the workforce. It's really important for us to consider those today and really consider how we as organizations invite women in, but also invite all people in, right? Because Kristina's stories, is specific to her as a woman, but there's also stories like her that of men, right? That have babies at home that also want to be a really active parent and might not be able to. So providing balance in the workplace is obviously really important. And it sounds like Saskatchewan is an incredible place to be in a community of people that are willing to sort of put their hand up, pitch in, and help out, which is awesome. If someone told me 10 years ago I would be standing on stage with Kristina Kiss, I'd be like, no way, no way. So like, can we just like acknowledge for a second that I'm standing on stage with Kristina Kiss? Because like, she's amazing, and what she's been able to accomplish is amazing. So we're really excited to chat with you guys today. So you guys heard from me earlier when I was chatting with Dave Nutt. Maybe a few things that you don't know is that I think we talked about it, but I spent 10 years in the charitable sector. So I came out of my undergrad. I was a competitive player growing up. I loved soccer, it like oozed through my blood. I went to the University of Guelph to do my undergrad and then started working at Guelph Soccer right away. And I spent about 3 years with the club in a coordinator level position, and I couldn't move any further. There was no place for me to go, and it got so frustrating. And whether that was gender related or just like opportunity related, I eventually made the decision to leave the sport entirely. And I spent 10 years in the charitable sector. I learned a ton, worked with 2 incredible national charitable organizations, but soccer is my passion and my love. And so when the opportunity presented itself to come back to Guelph Soccer, I did. But it just represents, our 2 stories represent the fact that like there's gotta be some creative flexibility in the workplace. There's gotta be opportunity for women. And I think that we're just feeling fortunate and lucky today to have these platforms to stand here and talk to you. And we just wanna share a little bit about gender equity, and then hopefully towards the end, a little bit about what we've done at our particular clubs, but we'll jump right in.
All right, so just a quick overview of what we'll be covering today. We're going to look at what is gender equity versus what is gender equality. Look a little bit about what the data is currently saying. We're going to look at the benefits of gender equity, both for the participants and for the organizations. We're going to share a little bit about how to start building out an EDI policy and what should go into an EDI policy. We're going to look at Canadian women in sports same game steps, and then as Sarah mentioned, we're going to finish off with some practical examples from back home. So what is gender equity? And I'll just read this definition for you. Gender equity is the process of allocating resources, programs, and decision-making fairly to all genders without discrimination on the basis of gender, and addressing any imbalances in the benefits available to people of different genders. So it isn't offering everybody the same opportunity. It's giving everybody what they need to succeed and to participate at a comfortable level. If you gave Sara her jersey right now and you gave me the same size jersey, it wouldn't work. One of us wouldn't feel very comfortable. It's the same thing in gender equity and equity across the board. We need to recognize that different communities and different people need different things to succeed in sport. And what does the data say? So Canadian Women in Sport does some fantastic work in tackling gender inequity across the Canadian sport landscape. They wrote a report called the Rally Report in 2020, and were able to show us what the numbers currently say. And I was actually shocked by this first stat. Up to 62% of Canadian girls are not participating in any organized sport. And that actually makes me sad, seeing that stat and knowing how much I've benefited and developed through sport. When I was a kid, I was extremely shy, and now I'm just a little bit shy. I was able to be physically active, I was able to be social with my friends, I was able to bond with people, and it's lifelong bonds. And to think that so many girls in this country are not getting that opportunity, it saddens me, and it really inspires me to try to do something about it. 1 in 3 girls drop out of sport in adolescence. In comparison, about 1 in 10 boys drop out in adolescence. So again, it's a marker. We have to figure out why that's happening. We know a lot of the reasons why that's happening, but we need to tackle that issue at that age band. And then 43% of girls reported the quality of their sporting experience as a barrier, and that's on us. That's on us to improve their experience, to retain them in the sport longer. Ideally from what we would call the wee warriors at our club, all the way through to the old timers. And then a couple stats from Canada Soccer. 38% of our registered members are girls and women. It's an okay number. For me, I ask the question, can we achieve gender parity when it comes to participation between girls and boys? Why can't we have 50-50? Why don't we have 50-50? And I think those questions are important to ask when looking at the data. And then finally, 29% of our refs across the country are women and girls. And maybe women and girls just know better. But we do know the issues of creating a positive culture and a supportive culture for our referees.
All right, here's where it's like after lunch, you guys are a bit tired, I need your participation. So you're gonna all pull out your devices that I know you have right beside you. You're gonna go to your web browser and you're gonna type this sli.do and you're gonna push enter. That's what you're gonna do. And we tested tech like 17 times, so we're really hopeful that it works, okay? So just sli.do. Yeah, right there? All right, and I'm sliding, all right. Oh, code's on the screen, don't worry, don't panic. All right, so code is 438339. So now you should see a question, and it says, how does gender equity, oh, hang on, pause, don't do anything yet. We got the wrong question live. No. There we go. Okay. All right. Here we go. Starting again. Sorry. We tested tech. I promise. We're professionals. How does gender equity in sport benefit women and girls? So this is the moment where you pause and you think about your daughter. You think about your granddaughter. You think about your sister. You think about your mom. You think about your aunt. How does it benefit women and girls? So think about those people in your life and answer that question. Perfect. And we will begin to see the answers populate on the board. And I'm going to wait awkwardly while you guys all take a second to answer that. I wish that was like a wee bit bigger, but you guys are doing great. And I see you're all looking down at your phones. It looks like we're voting a little bit too, so we're getting interactive with this like cool little thing. So if anyone's not used this slide up before, I think it's the most simple thing to use possibly, and it creates this beautiful word cloud for us right away. And so as you guys are voting on stuff right now, you'll see that the words are getting bigger, which is pretty cool, right? So right now we've got confidence. That's really, really big. So if we went, okay, gender equity benefits women and girls in terms of their confidence, wow, like wouldn't we all want to be part of that? Health, yes, right? Strong bones, muscles, joints, lower blood pressure, like all of the things that we know that come from good physical health. Opportunity, yeah, what kind of opportunity opens up? So I'm gonna like totally blow past my next slide because you guys are all too smart, but opportunity. So one of the research things I was gonna quote later was the fact that there was a survey done of 400 women, 94 of them, high-level executive women, 94 of them said that their sport competition or their sport participation contributed to their success in their career, and 61% said they wouldn't be where they were without that participation in sport. Inclusion. We all want to feel like we are included in something, part of something, sense of belonging, absolutely. Self-esteem, leadership, opportunity, strength, future, bonds, success, self-esteem, mental. Your voice is heard, you're important. It's positive, a sense of community, competence, team, empowered, access, welcoming, inviting. So I think that like when you look at these words and you think about people that you love in your life that is either a woman or a girl, you can see that there's so many benefits to getting girls to access and women to access our game. So researchers often place the benefits of sport in 4 different categories: health, educational, psychosocial, and financial. There's a huge cost savings globally to getting physically active. We know things like that. This is one of my favorite quotes, and I thought it deserved its own slide. Kristina and I had a little bit of a battle, and she was like, does it really need its own slide? I'm like, I don't know, I think it needs its own slide. If a girl does not participate in sport by the age of 10, there's only a 10% likelihood that she'll be physically active as an adult. We have this window of opportunity to catch our girls because we want them to be active for life. There's so much adult soccer in this community, in this province, but we need to catch them, because if only 10% are active when they've been physically active as a kid, or not been physically active as a kid. Okay, next one. We're gonna stop and play. You got it. Hang on. So we've talked about our granddaughters, our nieces, our mothers, but as the gender gap continues to grow, let's talk a little bit about the business case, right? We're all running organizations. We need to do what's right for our organization. So how does this benefit our organizations? So let's talk a little bit about that. So this is what you saw first. Oh, look at you guys going. Okay, so how does gender equity benefit your organization? Some of the answers I can see already: play, yeah, right? Membership increase, more kids are playing, more participation, a wider base, right? We talk about membership decline, confidence, inclusion for all, welcoming level of competition. So there's definitely some strong ones there, right? Like when we talked earlier, when I sat on the stage and someone said, how are you growing your membership? It looks like this might be one of the key driving factors, right? Gender equity, access, inclusion. Amazing. Eden, I'm gonna share these all with you, because you've got a group here, an entire room that sees the benefits for both their daughters, their granddaughters, their moms, their aunts, their nieces, and then also the benefits as an organization. So we're going to talk a little bit more about benefits of the organization.
Yeah, so some great answers from the room. Not only can we increase the membership, but we could retain membership through gender equity initiatives, which is important to know, especially when we look at the data and we see those numbers decline in adolescents. We could definitely look at the ability to access new funding. There's government grants, there's PSO grants, there's federal grants, there's sponsorship, there's partnerships that all could come out of gender equity initiatives or driving gender equity. I know that Eden was talking to us yesterday about the special projects funds here in Saskatchewan, and I really encourage everybody here in the room to find out more about how to access that and how to go about creating accessible soccer. And it's not just in gender equity, but equity and inclusion, diversity across the board. And I know that Sara will touch on some funding streams in her project that she's running out in Guelph. She's got games she can coach, which is an extremely exciting, massive project that she'll detail later on. The rest of the benefits, I think, were all listed in your answers. Again, Dave, you could correct me if I'm wrong later on, but meeting those Canada Soccer licensing standards are also important, and I believe accessibility and inclusion will become a little bit more prescriptive in the near future, because those are the kind of clubs that we want to build as a community. So. So, building your EDI policy. We have some suggestions on what should go into an EDI policy. It's not an extensive list, but there's definitely some key pieces here. We will be providing Saskatchewan Soccer with a template of an EDI policy for those of you who want to pursue this for your own organizations. I know Saskatchewan Soccer has done a lot of work in this area, and a lot of fantastic work in this area as well, and would be willing to help each and every one of you moving forward. So it's important to explicitly acknowledge the existence of a problem in your EDI policy. It goes to why you're writing one, why you're publishing one for your members to see. Something along the lines of, we acknowledge the histories of exclusion and inequity upon which the Canadian sports system was built, and that these legacies continue to play out in our organization in often unrecognizable ways. That's just one example, but I think it's important to acknowledge that piece. Committing to taking action in relation to the problem and stating the organization's goal to becoming more equitable and inclusion need to go in an EDI policy. So another example, Saskatchewan Soccer, I'll just use them, aspires to create safe, inclusive, equitable, and affirming sporting and working experiences for all athletes, volunteers, and staff. Again, we will be providing a template with suggestions that you can use when building your EDI policy. Including specific accountable goals, processes, and interventions within that policy is important. Prioritizing transparency, including access to policies and progress made so far. I know often, especially with club licensing, we have a tendency to pull in a policy just to meet a standard or to meet an obligation, but these pieces can really help your club grow. They could help with the reputation of your club. There's so many benefits to implementing a policy like this. So be upfront with your members. Ensure that your staff knows that you have these policies and understands why these policies are in place. And then finally, track markers of institutional change and have meaningful ways of disclosing harm. Don't simply rely on individuals coming forward to disclose harm. Have a process in place that you follow each and every time something happens. And then just adding on to building out an EDI policy, compare equity policies and ensure equal commitment to all forms of equity. So we're here talking about gender equity right now, but you have to have policy in place if you're going to create policy for everybody you're servicing in your community. So understanding your community, and I think Sara talked to it in her chat with Dave, understanding your community demographics and ensuring that you have policy to support everybody in those communities is extremely important. Focus on fixing inequalities within the sporting system and not sport as a savior. And then focus on removing barriers to participation, not creating new barriers. If you think about trans athletes, and you think about the construction of medically invasive barriers that we've created for trans athletes to participate, we've added to the issue. We're not removing barriers, we're adding barriers to the problem. So we need to be cognizant of that when we're designing an EDI policy. Finally, without careful attention to a language and what language does or doesn't do, it's very possible that the very documents we hope will begin the process of inclusion actually perpetrate exclusion and harm. So be careful with your language in your documents. Have someone check it who's in this field. I know when I was designing an EDI policy, I went to Ottawa University. Universities have some of the best EDI policies in Canada, and they're very willing to offer their help.
We're talking to you guys about policies after lunch. We recognize that it's not so thrilling, but policy is often a starting point, right? It's something that we can fall back on when things go so wrong. But like, we're doers, like we're soccer programmers, we wanna get more kids playing, we're super excited, and then we like immediately decide we're gonna get more female coaches, and tomorrow we plan something, and then on Saturday we've got something happening, right? That's what we do. That's what we do, maybe in Guelph. But so we've like learned from that a little bit, that like, yes, doing is good, but having a vision is where we need to start often. What's the purpose? What are we trying to achieve? You guys heard me talking earlier about club licensing, so you know that I'm a huge fan of frameworks, of toolkits, of things where I don't need to reinvent the wheel, because I think everyone in this room is under-resourced. That's the reality of sport organizations, right? There's not enough time. So I'm a big believer in like, don't reinvent the wheel. Has anyone seen the Same Game Toolkit? Okay, I feel honored to introduce it to you. So the Same Game Toolkit is an online toolkit to help sport leaders at all levels bring gender equity vision to life. Participants walk through a systematic process for embedding gender equity into their organizations, from creating a vision to implementing initiatives to reflecting and revising and all the steps in between. Kristina does really good when she reads notes. I don't do so well. I should just talk. So I was really fortunate with Guelph Soccer. We worked with Canadian Women's Sport when this toolkit was in its infancy, and we were a pilot organization. So the toolkit originally had about 12 steps, and as an organization, we were able to sort of iterate with them and tell them how they needed to remove some pieces because there was too much, and it's now in this current form. There may be a video of me somewhere in this, so like, so check it out. But it's incredible. And what I love about toolkits is it's take what you want and leave what doesn't work for you. It's not supposed to be take it all. But so that's just the introduction of the toolkit, but we want to talk a little bit about vision today. And because you've heard from me lots, we're gonna hope tech works. One sec. Your sound's off.
Perfection. I'm just gonna sit here until you're done.
Without having a vision, you're not going anywhere. And this is we often say with the model that people jump right to the implementation stage because it's really, really easy to kind of tick that box. But if you have a vision, it means that you're going to be looking at a number of things for a number of years. If you have a vision that's a 10-year vision, that means that you have 10 years to get there. So you can do a stepped process. And if you have a vision, an ultimate goal that you want to try to achieve in 10 years or 5 years, then you're always striving for something and you keep your eye on the prize.
You need to create that vision because that's what you're working toward. You've set our goal. So our goal is cause, and we want to work towards 50% of our members or 50% of our board or 50% of our refs or 50% of our office admin, whatever that is, that's your goal. But what is your long-term vision? You can just settle with once we get there because you need to sustain it. And if we don't have the vision towards sustainability, well, it's not going to happen and it's going to go back to the way it was.
If everyone has the same vision as a club, you're united, you're a unit, and you can implement things much more impactful and much more successfully. So I think for those who don't have a vision, coming together and starting a conversation just about what your future looks like. What are your plans? 10 years down the road, what do you want to see?
The ones who do it really well, they're going for the long game, right? They're going for the 3-year, 5-year vision where they move the needle from 30% female participation to 40%. The strength of this whole visioning, lies in the fact that you have a greater goal that you can achieve. You have a greater checklist you can check off if you actually plan for that in the long term.
Ultimately, you can't beat yourself up too much if you don't achieve that vision fully. Everything is about adjusting and reevaluating. And so don't just do it and then 10 years later look at it. You've got to always keep that vision top of mind. And if you need to adjust it a little bit along the way, then adjust it.
So vision's the first step. Oftentimes people come to me and say, well, I want to make sure that our girls and adolescents aren't dropping out. What do I do? Right? We often go to the doing phase. So the intention there with Same Game in the toolkit is to start with the visionary phase. What are you trying to achieve? Make that clear, and then begin your doing. However, we got one more step before we start to do, right? It's hard, I know, we want to do. Collecting data. So this is new for me. When I first started at the club, it was a lot of doing. I had a lot of stuff that I had to just fix and get in place and get in order, and I had to do it based on a lot of assumptions. We're now in a stronger position where we use data a lot. And so with our Same Game pilot that's turned into our She's Got Games, She Can Coach project, we reviewed our data by the advice of Same Game, because we were trying to solve this like gender participation problem we assumed we had at our organization. But when we looked at our numbers in the recreational level, it was about 44% of our players were girls. When we looked at our coaches, there was about 27% that were female. So when we actually looked at the data, we were going to try and solve the female participation problem when our problem was really about the female coach problem, right? Why don't we have enough women, or why don't we have more women in coaching positions? And so collecting the data was really to help us determine where we were going to start and what problem we were trying to solve. And what it does for you is it establishes a baseline. When you know what the data says today, you know if next year or next 5 years whether you're getting better or not. It also helps you identify some strengths, right? We were like, awesome, like at our youngest age groups, we've got really great participation rates in girls, amazing. But it also identified some areas of opportunity for us as well.
And then the next step would be to plan. So we have some examples of goals or objectives. Again, they're pretty broad and general. We have to understand if you go into this with a goal of increasing the number of female coaches, you should have specific targets, specific KPIs. You should understand the resources needed to achieve that goal, and you should have a time frame around the goal. So it's not as simple as saying, let's increase the number of female coaches in the club. There has to be a full plan that you can actually implement, and it takes manpower and sometimes funding, and sometimes some unexpected things pop up. So these projects have to be really well thought out. I just want to highlight one of the examples here. Ensure there is a minimum of 40% gender representation on the board. When I was at West Ottawa Soccer for the first few years, we had one type of board member, that middle-aged, successful, white male whose kid was in our high performance program. And they made all the decisions based on their own experiences. So if they were voting on a $2 increase of a pair of socks for our recreational program, it wasn't a big deal to them. But after some extra registration fees came into play, a 2% increase in registration fees, plus the $2 socks were added up, we lost 15% of our house league numbers that year, all because of a decision to increase the price by $2, but moreover, a decision that was made by people who had one experience. So having diversity, not just gender diversity, but having diversity on your board from different socioeconomic backgrounds, different ethnic and cultural backgrounds is extremely important. And then finally, we get into the deliverables. And again, there's some examples here, but when you're creating your deliverables, you have to talk to the community that you're putting the program together for. So I put women's mentorship program here. Not all women want a women's mentorship program. Some women want to be incorporated into a co-ed mentorship program or your standard mentorship program. So it's important, again, to engage the community that you're trying to support while building this out. Changing the culture at an organization to eliminate gender discrimination really will help create more inclusive environments and help people feel that sense of belonging that they need in clubs. I don't know how many times I was asked, what my husband did when people found out that I was the technical director of a club. I'm not sure how many men have been asked that question that were in the same position as me. Little things like that. The ref coming up to myself and my manager, who happened to be male, and assuming that he was the coach and I was the manager. All those little things that we probably all experience, you know, that has to change, and we have to work at changing it and work to make people understand that that impacts our experiences, you know, in those environments. Yeah, so I think we're gonna take a little break.
So quick bio break, get
Yeah.
some coffee. We're gonna jump into like our projects that we've been working on, because I know that you guys wanna say like, okay, thanks for talking policy, thanks for talking process, got it.